I got a story to tell. Lessons from the parables of Jesus. Yeah, what's going on, party people? The place to be. I go by the name of the BK Apologist, transmitting all the way live. New York is the city. Brooklyn is the borough. What's good? What's popping? Happy Bodega Eve. Let's say what's up to the party people in the chat. We got Adrian Jones. We got Richard Redeem. We got the Bodega ladies, Dean New, Michelle Turner, and we got Shotty Mills. Yeah, what's going on? Tyler Lott, Mr. Phil Fox, the Real American. We got Alejandro Que Lo Que. Oh, man, this is good. This is good. As you know, guys, please share the link. Tell a friend to tell a friend that it's him again. And this is good. This is good. We got Mateo in the building. We got the incomparable, the indelible Nate2D2 is in the building. What's going on, sir? And, yeah, man, it's been good. I just want to thank everybody for the prayers. Just dealing with the passing of my dad. That's why I haven't really been online as much. And I definitely felt the prayers. Me and my wife definitely thank you guys for that. And it means a lot. It definitely means a lot. We definitely felt you guys, talking to the Lord for us. So we definitely appreciate that. So today, getting back on the horse, we're going to talk about the parables of Jesus. Now, when I was thinking of doing this, I couldn't think of a better co-pilot than the second half of Context 360, Mr. Triple B himself, CMB, the ambassador. What's going on, sir?
What's good, my brother? I'm glad that you're doing okay. And again, our prayers are with you, man. Love you to pieces. And your dear wife as well, too, bro. But yeah, man, it's great to be back. Took a little hiatus for a couple weeks there. Back again, kind of in and out of hibernation, but we'll be back from the Triple B pretty soon here, a couple weeks. So see that.
And when we say Triple B, sir, what exactly are we talking about?
We are talking about back to Bible basics with the ambassador, or Triple B with me. That's what we're talking about.
There you go. So definitely, if you haven't, please like, share, and subscribe to Triple B. And we have a man. How long have we known each other now for?
Late 16, early 17. So however long that is, 5 years, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so just so you know the origin story here. So we have
it's a good one.
It's a good one. It's a lot, yeah. So we had a friend in common by the name of Ayo Green. Shout out to Ayo Green. He actually is the one to introduce me and CMB. Mm-hmm. We clicked instantly, and he really encouraged the both of us to start working together online. Like prior to that, I haven't done anything on YouTube, and I don't think you have either, right?
No, not at all.
So we went and decided to, we made up this little group called Context 360, and it was rough because neither one of us knew how to use the technology. There was no StreamYard at the time, right? That makes things a whole lot easier. So we were trying to figure it out. I didn't have a webcam. I don't think you had a webcam. I didn't have no mics. My Dell laptop was like 20,000 years old. I had two little birds on a conveyor belt running. That's how I was, electricity was coming through my laptop via Flintstones. And we both came a long way. Right? And we first started with, basically what CMB has been continuing, which is, the Bible basics, different types of context in the Bible, the different translations, and he's continued doing that on his channel, and I think it's desperately needed because not only for the new believer, but even for us old guys, who've been around a minute, we need a refresher from time to time. So I really appreciate, the niche you've created, and you've been a great friend to me. I just want to put that on record, and I love you, man. I love you a lot. You've been really good, to me, and I don't know if I could have done this far without having someone like you around. You know what I mean? So I just want to just put that out there. So
yeah. All right. Well, since we being mushy. I'll tell everybody. And again, some of you already know, but actually, BK actually came and did a whole weekend of apologetics at my church. You know what I mean? And my church is probably one of the tiniest churches in the tri-state area. But man, we he came out here and bro, you put in work. I mean, like from is it Saturday, like all day. How many sessions did you Saturday? 3 or 4?
Something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. You taught Sunday school and you preached on Sunday. We put him to work, bro. And and Sister Michelle wasn't feeling great. It was her birthday weekend. So you down the street, girl. So we're gonna have you back for real as well too.
Right,
so shout out to our favorite apologist, Michelle Turner as well.
But
yeah,
what you did there.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yeah, man. But BK is, I said, a good brother, a humble brother. His beautiful wife was there as well too. We got to hang out a little bit and talk and just kick it, and it's family, so it's real. It's not just TV stuff or YouTube stuff or whatever, man. This is real family right here, man. So
now, yeah, we saw them in real time. You hanging out with him, the kids, some of the most well-behaved children I've ever seen. Like him and his wife do not play. Like they are on it. It was amazing to watch him work. His wife can bake like nobody's business.
Yeah, shout out to you, baby. Love you, Andrea.
Yo, she made these vegan cupcakes, son. Woo! Crack.
Yes, indeed.
So, but yeah, man. So enough of the bromance. So, I just want to say that I just felt like we haven't been together, doing a show in a minute. I just want to put that on record. You know what I mean? What's going on here?
I don't know. My phone just turned on YouTube on accidentally. So there we go. No Sorry problem. About the technical difficulties, fam. All right, we're back.
So, yes, I got a story to tell. Lessons from the parables of Jesus. Mm-hmm. So, Mr. Triple B, if you was to try to explain, like do a 30-second elevator pitch on what a parable is, how would you go about defining that?
Okay, so the classic preacher definition of a parable is an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. But the way Jesus uses these parables, it's in a way to do several things all at once. To talk about prophecy, to expose people's motives, like the Pharisees or whatever the case is, to conceal truth from those who he has beef with or whatever the case is, and to reveal truth to a lot of people. So I think it's one of the best ways to contextualize the gospel. Right? For people who are the hearers at that time. You know what I'm saying? So we got people that they're I don't know, we're gonna get into all this there, but people that can, in a way that people can understand it, and watch this, contemplate it for a long time coming afterwards. So I know we're gonna get into all that later as well too. But yeah, that's the biggest thing.
That was good. So so let's look at what some theologians how they define this genre called the parable. In the Teaching of Jesus, Studies in Its Form and Content by T.W. Manson, he says a parable is a literary creation in narrative form designed either to portray a type of character for warning or example, or to embody a principle of God's governance of the world and men. Right? So that's pretty cool. In The Parables of the Kingdom by C.H. Dodd, he says parables are the natural expression of a mind that sees truth in concrete pictures rather than conceives it in abstractions. Right? So it's like these stories help to bring these abstract ideas and anchors them into the day-to-day reality that we live in, right? This is from Biblical Hermeneutics. It says here, Paul Ricoeur described parables as the conjunction of a narrative form and a metaphoric process. That's super nerdy, I know.
I like
it is what it is. Stories with Intent, a comprehensive guide to the parables of Jesus by Klein R. Snodgrass, says some parables, especially given the way that the New Testament used the word parable and not narratives, and some are not metaphorical, or at least it's debated whether they are. Better is Theon's definition of fable, mythos, the genre to which parables belong as, quote, fictitious saying picturing truth, or best of all, to adopt the words of a modern poet, Parables are imaginary gardens with real toads in them. They create an imaginary world that reflects reality. Of fables, it has been said that they are a tactical maneuver to prompt new thinking and that their author engages to manipulate. That is also the case with parables. Right? Soren Kierkegaard treatments of indirect communication deserve careful reflection. He helps us see that direct communication is important for conveying information, but learning is more than information, especially when people think they already understand. People set their defenses against direct communication and learn to conform its message to the channels of their understanding of reality. Indirect communication finds a way in a back window and confronts what one thinks is reality. Parables are indirect communication. So, what are some of your thoughts about these various definitions, bro?
I like some of them. I didn't understand the toad part, but gardens with real toads. I can't remember the thing for that, but I didn't quite catch all of what they were trying to go.
Again, the idea is you create this. It's a fantasy, but it has truth to it.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's kind of where it's at, because remember, we're talking about people. Jesus is talking to people that are largely illiterate. You know what I'm saying? So they're not going to be able to read necessarily by themselves, all of them. Anyway, some could, some couldn't. And so as anything does, what that has like a lasting impression, like any kind of hip hop music genre. Some people will sit there and, all of us had to study Shakespeare in high school, right? And so that kind of thing, where even though we know the stories that Shakespeare told or wrote anyway, they're from his imagination, having to study them and to look at the characters and their motivations for whatever the case is, that's important. And go back to the hip hop thing as before, there's wordplay involved in these things. You know what I'm saying? There's we're looking at the character that the person's building or rapping about or whatever the case is, and we're seeing how that can apply. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of one of the things that I love about watching how Jesus is working, in the parable. So that's pretty dope as is.
Cool. So let's continue here. It says here, if meaning is the value assigned to a set of relations, parables provide new sets of relations that enable us or force us to see in a fresh manner. Parables function as a lens that allows us to see the truth and to correct distorted vision. They allow us to see what we would not otherwise see, and they presume we should look at it and see a specific reality. They are not Rorschach tests. They are stories with an intent, analogies through which one is enabled to see truth. And lastly, parables are not merely informative like prophets before him. Jesus told parables to prompt thinking and stimulate response in relation to God.
Yeah.
Parables usually engage listeners, create reflection, and promote action. They are pointed and clinching arguments for a too often slow-minded or recalcitrant audience. All right.
Go ahead, bro. Yeah, I when you I saw the slides that you sent, man, and this one stuck out to me like it was like bang, and it made me think of how like especially you see it all over the Gospels, man, but especially like in Luke, you'll see that terminology. The kingdom of God is like this, or the kingdom of God is like that, and Jesus is telling all these parables, like the lost coin and the lost sheep and all this kind of stuff, and it's saying that you have to change your mindset about what the kingdom of God actually is in terms of the parable, and so like you said, when you look at ancient Israel and what they thought, and like, are you going to set up your kingdom now, Jesus? Stuff like that you see, and he's like, no, not really. You're just chill, watch me work, listen to me now, right? And he's trying to explain what the kingdom is actually like. It requires a metanoia, it requires a repentance, it requires a change of mind. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's kind of one of the things that we need to kind of get at when we're looking in terms of the parables. Just because, you know, our Western mind says when we ask questions, we expect a concrete response, right? You know, well, why is this happening? Oh, it's because this. Oh, okay. And then we're off to the next thing. However, in the ancient Near East, what times you'll get stories, you'll get fables, you get myths. So you have to think of these things over and over again, whether there's truth in it or not. Of course, from Christ, you know, I would imagine that there could be no greater source of truth, you know, coming from Jesus himself. So that's one of those things that we're requiring, you know, we're being required rather to understand what he's saying and to really think about it in terms of the kingdom.
Right. And, you know, just looking at these various ways of understanding the genre, I definitely have a different understanding now. Like these stories were very dangerous.
Right.
You know, when you look at the parables within its proper context, it was meant to be provocative. It pushed buttons. It was supposed to bother you.
Yeah.
Right. Because a lot of these have these M. Night Shyamalan plot twists that people did not like. But because it disrupted them, it forced them to drop down their presupposition so they could actually hear now what they needed to understand. It's like he was trying to recalculate their reality with these very short, but what's inappropriate. There was certain things that he would say that they would consider inappropriate.
Right.
So when they started clutching their pearls, it made them drop their guards down.
Yeah. You know what? As you're talking about that, is reminding me of something. You know, when somebody says something so outlandish, right? Can you keep it to yourself when that happens? No, you gotta tell people, yo, you never guess what this clown said, blah blah. You know, so inadvertently, they're actually preaching the gospel. Jesus is using these guys to use them. Like, listen, I'm going to tell you something so outside of your thinking that you can't help but tell somebody else, and you can plant a seed at that point in time. You know, it's crazy to me, and I love Jesus does this stuff all the time, and watching the master at work, it's a beautiful thing, bro.
Absolutely, and it's something that as followers of Jesus, we have to learn how to do this too, right? To create these short, pithy little stories that disrupts people's understanding, you know, so that they can actually now learn something new. So with that being said, and us just laying down the foundation of a parable, let's look at some parables within their proper context, and let's see if we can get everybody in the chat mad by sharing these parables.
All right, church folks, hold your wigs down. Let's go.
All right, so first one we're going to discuss is the Unforgiving Servant. So CMB, if you could be so kind to read Matthew 18:23-35.
Sure, I'll try to use my Mr. Phil Fox voice here.
There you go.
That's good, bro. I see him in the chat. All right, Matthew 18 verses 23-35 says, ESV says, therefore the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who wished to settle accounts with his servants. When he began to settle, one was brought to him who owed him 10,000 talents, and since he could not pay, his master ordered him to be sold with his wife and children and all that he had, and payment to be made. So the servant fell on his knees, imploring him, have patience with me, and I will pay you everything. And out of pity for him, the master of that servant released him and forgave him the debt.
Yeah, continue.
But when that same servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii. And seizing him, he began to choke him, saying, pay me what you owe. So his fellow servant fell down and pleaded with him, have patience with me, and I'll pay you. He refused and went and put him in prison until he should pay the debt. When his fellow servants saw that what had taken place, they were greatly distressed, and they went and reported to their master all that had taken place. Then his master summoned him and said, you wicked servant, I forgave you all that debt because you pleaded with me. And should you not have had mercy on your fellow servant as I had mercy on you? And in anger, his master delivered him to the jailers until he should pay all his debt. So also my heavenly Father will do to every one of you if you do not forgive your brother from your heart.
Great.
Bang.
So let's get a little context here. This is from the Parables of Jesus, a commentary by Arlen J. Hertgren. says here, the man owes the king 10,000 talents, a truly astronomical figure. The term talent originally specified a weight that varied in differing parts of the Middle East. By means of its weight, a talent could designate value. A talent of gold or silver, for example, could be weighed out. By the 1st century, however, the term commonly referred to a monetary unit equivalent to 6,000 denarii. Since the denarius was a day's wages for a common laborer, and he might work some 300 days per year, a talent would be worth nearly 20 years' wages. Multiplied by 10,000, the amount owned by the slave would be equivalent to nearly 200,000 years' wages for one man, or a year's wages for 200,000 persons. So, because we hear these monetary terms, and we don't know because we don't use these terms, right?
Right.
But now it's like, okay, so Jesus says that this dude owed the king 200,000 years worth of wages. So imagine him telling people this story and them knowing, like, this is ridiculous. Jesus, what are you talking about?
You're talking like Elon Musk money?
You know what I mean? It's like, there's no way this guy could pay back the king ever, right? That's the point. He's being hyperbolic. That's the intent, right? So people are already like, okay, this is off, Jesus. What are you doing? It's like, there's no way he could pay him back. Right. Exactly. So according to Josephus, the taxes for the whole of Judea, Idumea, and Samaria for an entire year at the time of the death of Herod the Great amounted to 600 talents. And those for Galilee and Perea combined amounts to 200 talents.
Wow. So
we're talking like it's through the roof. There's no way this dude could ever pay back the king, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, so one man owed the equivalent of the GDP of the entire United States. Basically, right? Something like that, right?
Something like that. But that's by design, right? Very hyperbolic. Right. So to continue here, it says the term of having compassion occurs a dozen times in the New Testament in the Gospels only. Apart from its use here in 2 other parables in Luke's Gospel, the Good Samaritan and the prodigal son, the term is not used in reference to the emotions of persons. It is used in reference to God, expressing divine compassion that is revealed in Jesus. In this parable, as well in the other 2, the term is used in reference to persons who reflect divine compassion. So when the king forgives the servant of the 200,000 years worth of wages, this is a reflection of divinity. Right? Because regular mere mortals, we're not really good at forgiving, are we?
No, not all the time. No.
Even especially people always, if you owe me $20, it might be on and popping.
Right.
So imagine 200,000's worth. You know what I mean? It's crazy. So to continue, it says the refusal is quick and retaliation is decisive. Putting his fellow slave in prison for debt was an act forbidden by Jewish law from biblical to Talmudic times. But various sources indicate that it was a widespread custom allowed by Greco-Roman law in the 1st century. So let's keep painting this picture. So, right, the servant owed the king an astronomical amount of money. There's no way humanly possible to repay.
Right.
King forgives him. Right, which is a act of divine intervention, because only God has that capacity, right? So then this dude turns around and has another slave that owes him money, and instead of forgiving him, he puts him in prison. But in that culture, you're not supposed to do that to your fellow Jew,
right?
Even though it was now legal because, Israel was under Greco-Roman rule, it was still looked down upon you putting your fellow Jew in jail.
Right.
So we didn't know that. We know that now. So when you look at the story, it's like, damn, this dude is a foul cat. It's like, this dude just forgave 2,000 tons worth of debt.
Right.
And then you turn around and you put your man in prison? Like, this, you're nasty, bro. Like, what are you doing?
Right. And I think the kind of bringing the 2 types of laws together. So you got the law of the Jewish people that was given by God, through Moses or whatever the case was, and even through their own traditions that were based on that. And then you have some outsiders that are changing the rules, and you'd rather go with outsiders,
Right.
over your own God. That's a problem. You know what I'm saying? Like,
So not only are you not being forgiving, you're
right.
being oppressive
There you go. And hypocritical. Yeah.
and hypocritical, right?
Big
All
fact.
right, so let's continue. So the king's hands the slave over to be dealt with severely. It's not likely that he hands him over for incarceration. The use of the Greek term always has the nuance of torture, and kings in parables can do as they please. Therefore, to the torturers seems to be the best translation. The wording of the final clause, until he should pay all the debt, is almost identical of that in 18 verse 30, except that the word all appears here. The slave has lost not only the forgiveness that he had received, his debt is back on his shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
And he must now face torture, which will no doubt lead to premature death. In any case, since there is no possibility of paying his debt of 10,000 talents, he will be among the torturers as long as he lives.
That's
So
crazy.
he doesn't get to go to jail. He gets to be tortured. And since he owes 200,000 years worth of wages, he's now incurred 200,000 worth of beatings.
Right. That's a lot of whoopings right there.
A lot of whipping. But again, right now that we understand that, it's like, oh, this is horrible.
Right.
Why didn't he just forgive him like the king forgave him? Right.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Forgive like the king forgives. Because if you're not, there's some beatings coming in your immediate future.
Right.
Right. That's the parable.
Unavoidable beatings at that.
Unavoidable. Because there's no way his debt could be paid.
Mm-hmm.
So that means the debt is what? For the beating is for what? Eternity.
There you go. Uh-oh.
See that?
Uh-oh. I see what you did there.
All right. So that's that parable, right?
Right.
Well, before we continue, is there anything else you wanna tack on to this before we continue?
No, I think that's pretty clear, man. And I think, like, again, we go back to the context 360 days. Shout out to M for DC and Brittany and everybody else in the group too. But yeah, that's something that we got to make sure that we understand, man. I mean, the context is literally everything. It makes more sense. Things make sense once you understand the context, and it makes it more, like you said, it's the twist. That's the twist, right? It's not just okay till he's done, paying the debt. There is no paying the debt. So sorry about that, Chuck.
Yep. Hate to be you, fam.
Right.
Hate to be you. So the next parable we will discuss is the parable of the persistent widow.
All right.
Right. Luke 18, 1-8. CMB, if you could do the honors.
Sure. And shout out to the professor, MJ. What's good, man? Welcome.
What up, MJ?
Luke chapter 18.
Oh, MJ, you're gonna like this one.
Yeah. Right on time. All right, here we go. And he told them a parable in the effect that they ought always to pray and not lose heart. He said, in a certain city, there was a judge who neither feared God nor respected man. And there was a widow in that city who kept coming to him saying, give me justice against my adversary. Give me justice against my adversary. For a while he refused, but afterward he said to himself, though I neither fear God nor respect man, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will give her justice, so that she will not beat me down by her continual coming. Then the Lord said, hear what the unrighteous judge said. And will not God give justice to his elect who cry to him day and night? Will he delay long over them? I tell you, he will give justice to them speedily. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth? Faith on earth.
Right. And when we look at this parable, we think about, wow, she stood up for herself. Mm-hmm. She's very, she showed some spunk. Right. Mm-hmm. But it's a whole lot more. And right. you don't get it until you understand the cultural context behind this. So I'll be quoting from Parables as Subversive Speech, Jesus as Pedagogue of the Oppressed by William R. Herzog II. He says, although the Torah and presumably the oral Torah provided protection for the widow and orphan, their plight was common enough for the word widow to become a synonym for the poor or the destitute. A number of scholars have suggested that the very presence of a widow at courts is itself an extraordinary event that witnesses to her vulnerability. Women did not normally appear at court, but were represented by a male family member. Indeed, the very fact that the widow in the parable has appeared before the judge is a breach of etiquette. That she is representing herself may indicate that she has no family to which she can appeal for help. In this condition, her life may depend on the settlement of her case. So when Jesus says, here's this widow, all sorts of flags go up now.
Yep.
Because the way the widow's not supposed to be seen. Men supposed to take care of her, of her legal issues, whatever. The fact that she's in court is inappropriate for her to be in court, let alone defending herself.
Right. And watch this, inappropriate more often than not, because she's there so often, the judge is sick of her. Like, she'll keep coming back to court. I'll keep, doing what I got to do to take care of business.
Right.
Even though it's not convenient, even though it defies the conventions, of the culture. I'm preaching if y'all listening, like thanks, MJ. But I mean, that's one of those things that, we have to recognize that, like this is, oh my goodness, this has so many different nuance to it. Like, I mean, wow. Just the fact, and again, no family with which to represent.
None. It's just her.
Just me. And I'm out here by myself. No pillows. But
it's so already this part of the story, most people that's hearing Jesus say the story already don't like the story.
Right.
They don't like it. They don't like it. It's like, yeah, she shouldn't be there. Jesus, why are you doing this? This is not cool. You know what? But it gets worse though, right? So it says the judge experiences this assault as a battery. Quote, she will wear me out with a continual bruising. The verb, okay, how am I going to say this? Hypopazai is a boxing term that refers to the continual blows that eventually give one a black eye. The significance of the verb is that it portrays the widow as active and aggressive.
Help us, Lord.
Too many women in her situation accept the inevitable, and submit to the injustice of the system. Quite clearly, the widow knows that she can appeal to neither the judge's honor nor his compassion. So she keeps punching away, undeterred by the defensive posture of the judge. She does not appeal to the judge's idealism. That would be futile and fruitless. But she does test the limits of expediency. Even the judge may eventually decide that it's simply too costly to continue the stalemate. So here you have this woman being very inappropriate. But not only is she being inappropriate by appearing in the court, but she's being aggressive and active in the court. She's like, I need justice.
My God.
And she understands that this dude doesn't respect God nor man. The widow don't care. She's like, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to keep throwing these haymakers and you're going to keep catching them until one of us grow tired.
Right.
And I'm feeling really spry right now.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's like a pre-workout. She got this sick pump. Let's go. Yeah.
So this is this story. I mean, again, imagine yourself in the first century with this context in your head, hearing the story. This is a problematic story. It's like, so this widow, there's no one around to help her. She's by herself. She shouldn't be in the court. Where's her brother? Where's, a cousin? There's nobody there. And then she's acting up in the court too. Like, come on, Jesus. Like, what? And we're supposed to act like this?
Right.
Jesus, you're saying we should follow her lead.
Wow.
Right.
It's tripping me out about this whole thing too. Because, again, This sentence right here says, too many women in her situation accept the inevitable and submit to the injustice of the system. Let's break that down real quick, because we know that there weren't a lot of options according to laws. Even women couldn't even get property. You know what I'm saying? It had to always pass through the male hands at some point in time,
right.
through their bloodline or levirate marriage or what have you. And so the options are limited. And if she accepts the inevitability and the injustice of the system, she might have to go out here on the street corner and try and sell something she ain't supposed to be selling in order to survive. At that point in time, she is protecting her own integrity by bucking against the system, by bucking against the conventions, because it's not right. There's times where things, even though they're legal, they're not right. And so I think that, kind of taking care of business the right way before the judge and doing the right thing, being persistent, aggressive in a godly way, of course, that can help to change that situation and maybe change the situation for others. You know what I mean? That also don't have a voice. Uh-oh. We got political on here, didn't we? Oh boy,
just a little, just a little
bit.
but let's keep going. So it says here, at some fundamental level, the oppressed must collude in their oppression for the system to work. Usually, that collusion grows out of a sense of fatalism and despair that anything will change. Yet, this parable poses a limit situation with a familiar social script. The deck is stacked against the widow. She does not even have a male relative to represent her in the Torah court. She should just stay out of sight in a manner appropriate for a widow in mourning. Out of sight, out of mind. Then the parties in the case can work out their arrangement undisturbed by the widow's claims. The refusal of the widow to accept her predestined role breaks social barriers, crosses forbidden social and gender boundaries. The result of her shameless behavior is a just verdict.
Wow.
So okay. Yeah, bro.
No, I'm just making sure that that you didn't say this and that you're some kind of leftist Marxist.
No, sir.
Right?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
This is William Herzog, right?
Yeah.
Scholar. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this parable actually has two layers to it, right? One layer is Jesus is teaching us that we need to be active and aggressive when it comes to our interaction with God.
Right.
Because he's saying that if her being aggressive with this godless judge, God of justice, how much more would you get from God himself? Right? That's one layer. The other layer is you as a believer can get justice in a godless society.
Amen. Lord knows we need that nowadays too.
Right? Because for many Christians, it's like, we believe in biblical justice, but the world doesn't. So what do I do? You do what the widow does. You keep punching.
Yeah.
Think about it. This woman was inappropriate. She broke the rules of the culture. And she's like, I don't care. I don't care if you don't believe in God. I do. And I'm going to keep throwing these rights and these lefts at you until something happens. So this is the model that Jesus gives the people.
Right.
Be aggressive, and you can get justice in a godless world. That's powerful. And be aggressive, be in action when it comes to your communication with the Lord. Don't be lazy.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that, man, because when it comes to prayer, I think that when it comes to prayer, a lot of us underutilize prayer. And I don't think many of us really understand prayer. When Jesus says things like, go to God and go boldly to find grace and to help in the time of need in Hebrews. And then we see this incident here, how many of us really do that? and keep coming to God? Because sometimes we'll pray for things or pray for a situation, and then that's it. Out of sight, out of mind. Again, using that same phraseology there. I think that's kind of one of those things that we ought to explore. What prayer is and what it should look like. in the life of the believer, because it really should be an ongoing an attitude that we have. I keep talking about this book off and on from time to time, but we there's a book called Practicing the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence. You know that book. It's probably like maybe 60-70 pages, if that. A tiny book, and it's amazing. Just kind of talking about how we ought to have this mindset of prayer. We're always again practicing the presence of God. We're praying all the time in our hearts and our minds, and and talking to God throughout the course of the day, and that should be our MO, as Christians. We don't have to go to the church, in order to go to the altar to pray, or, hey, Pastor, can you pray for me? Because I can pray for you. I'll pray with you, but you need to talk to the Lord too on your own behalf as well too. I'm not a go-between, I'm not, what I'm saying? I'm gonna sit there in the booth and no shots against anybody, but I that's not my job. Right. I'm not the mediator. There is one mediator, right? Jesus Christ the righteous. And so we ought to handle that as well too, and be okay with that. We can talk to God. We can talk to our Father. There's no more veil. Come on, somebody. We talked about that, on Resurrection Weekend the other couple of weeks ago. But yeah, there's no more veil. We have no reason to be afraid to approach God with the things that are on our hearts and our minds, and the way that we ought to do it. So this is great. This is great. I love it.
Cool. All right, so let's tackle one more parable here. We're gonna address the Good Samaritan.
Mm-hmm.
Luke 10:25-37. CMB, if you please.
Sure. Luke 10. All right. And behold, a lawyer stood up and put him to the test, saying, Teacher, what should I do to inherit eternal life? He said to him, What is written in the law? How do you read it? And he answered, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And he said to him, You have answered correctly. Do this, and you will live. But he, desiring to justify himself, said to Jesus, And who's my neighbor? Jesus replied, A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among robbers, who stripped him and beat him and departed, leaving him half dead. Now, by chance, a priest who was going down that road, and when he, by chance, a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him he passed by on the other side. So likewise, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. He went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he set him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him. And the next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will repay when I come back. Which of these do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell among the robbers? He said, The one who showed him mercy. And Jesus said to him, You go and do likewise.
All right. This parable is super problematic for his fellow Hebrews, right? For various reasons. So it says here, the term lawyer refers to an expert in the law. It refers to that type of officer who's sometimes called a scribe in other contexts. That is a person who is trained to interpret and teach the law of Jewish tradition. So this guy knows what's going on with the scriptures, right? But he wants to, he's sparring with Jesus, right? So it says here that, of course, he talks about, he asks him what's the most important thing. He says, love the Lord your God and love your neighbor. Then, of course, he turns around like, yeah, so who's my neighbor? He's testing, right? He's testing Jesus because he wants to see, this guy's supposed to be the Messiah. Let's see how he works this, right?
Right.
So normally the term neighbor would refer to a fellow Jew or proselyte. That is confirmed by what is said in the context of the commandment to love the neighbor in the Old Testament. The commandment, Leviticus 19:18, is preceded by statements on how an Israelite will treat fellow Israelites, your own people. And that will be kind treatment. So just so you can see what I'm talking about here, look at the actual scripture. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the sons of your own people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. So the lawyer, he has this in the back of his pocket.
Right.
Like, so who's my neighbor? Because he knows what Leviticus says.
Right.
So he wants to see if Jesus knows what Leviticus says or if he agrees with Leviticus, right?
Yeah.
All right. So add some more background by Josephus here. It says the Jericho road was well known in antiquity for being difficult and dangerous. According to Josephus, it was desolate and rocky. And when the Essenes traveled it, they carried arms to protect themselves from robbers. Mm-hmm. So, this is like the south side of whatever neighborhood you're from. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to come there by yourself. You want to be, clicked up, right. Make sure everything is,
You got to check in before you walk through there.
You got to check in. It's a no-fly zone. Exactly. So now let's talk about these individuals, right, in the story. It says the priest is without excuse for his actions. If the victim of the robbery and beating could truly be taken for dead, the priest might have a good excuse, according to the law. A priest should not touch a corpse except that of a family member, and then he was unclean for 7 days. On the other hand, if the priest could see that the man was in need, he should help him. Mm-hmm. Saving a life overrides any other prescript of the law. The verb saying that the priest saw the victim, and when he saw him and passed him by, speaks volumes. Mm-hmm. So that means he saw he was alive,
right,
and kept it moving. Right. The Talmud discusses a number of cases as examples in which biblical mandated laws can be disregarded for the sake of saving a human life. So within their own culture and literature, he would have been allowed to help this person, even though it made him ceremonially unclean. It's okay. Right. Like you don't catch any demerits because you helped a human being, which is far more important than keeping that particular precept. Mm-hmm. But that's not what he did. The precept, the culture, the commandments were far more important than dealing with his fellow Hebrew. Right? The next person,
it could have been his week to preach too. So I mean,
he got to make the appearance, right?
Right.
Because if he doesn't come, where's brother Shlomo? Right? Where is he? Right. So, right. The next person on the scene is a Levite, a man from the tribe of Levi, and of high standing within the Jewish heritage. Both priests and Levites were actually from the tribe of Levi, but the priests were descendants of Aaron, the first of the priests, as well. Information on Levites is provided in Numbers 3:4 and 1 Chronicles 23. Essentially, the function was to assist priests in sacrifices. They prepared the sacrificial animal and grains. Like the priests, the Levite passed by, which cannot be excused. To be sure, any Israelite who touches a corpse is to be considered unclean for 7 days. But like the priest, again, the man is portrayed as without excuse, neglecting one who obviously needs help. The issue is not whether to touch a corpse or not. He too, quote unquote, saw the victim and went on. Mm-hmm. Right. So you got these two men of high standing within the nation of Israel who basically are the ones who guide and teach, to keep them aligned with Yahweh. Mm-hmm. And these dudes decided that we're not going to help a fellow Hebrew because my accoutrements and my, other obligations far outweigh the life of this mere Hebrew. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think, man, it speaks to a lot. Like you remember the story of when the people were bringing Jesus to stand before Herod, and then they had to track him over to Pilate and then back to Herod. They wouldn't go in Pilate's house, right? Because he was a Gentile, right? Right. And mind you, they're conspiring to murder a person, right? Which is against the law. But they don't want to go in the guy's house so that they can't keep the feast because, it's the feast. They want to keep the law, right? Like this is absolute madness when you kind of look at and break that down. Like you can't help nobody, right? To get them feeling, alive, get them to survive their injuries, that you can see that they've undergone, right? Because you're trying to keep Allah or get to the temple or whatever you're doing. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that in itself ought to tell us something, that we have we desire God so much that we will refuse to help or deal with an image bearer of God. That's a problem, right? That we need to have answers on that one. And this is, like you said, no excuses going on here.
Right. And so in this story, it's already getting his fellow Hebrews upset, because like, all right, here's this priest, he don't care about you. Here's the Levite who helps the priest, he don't care about you either. So the next person should be another Jew, right? But that's where the plot twist comes.
Yeah.
Right? Because the Samaritan shows up, right? It says the origin of the Samaritans can be traced to 722 BC, when the northern kingdom, Samaria, was conquered by the Assyrians. The king of Assyria brought immigrants from foreign lands to live in Samaria. And over time, these inhabitants worshiped foreign gods, and in the eyes of the Jewish people, departed from Jewish customs and sensibilities regarding the law. Rejecting the Old Testament as a whole, their only scriptures were a particular redaction of the 5 books of Moses, the Samaritan Pentateuch. Furthermore, they had their own temple at Gerizim. The Samaritans were typically regarded as Gentiles, or at best a degree nearer than Gentiles, but still not full members of the house of Israel. Samaritans continue to exist to the present day. In modern times, it has been estimated that some 250 live in or around Nablus, and another 250 at Holon near Tel Aviv. Right? And here's a quick photo. These are what's now considered the Samaritans.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's going to get some people upset, but hey, it is what it is. So, again, the term for having compassion occurs a dozen times in the New Testament. Part of its use here in 2 other parables. The term expresses divine compassion. We talked about this before, revealed in Jesus. The compassion of the Samaritan reflects divine compassion. The verb is related to the noun for entrails, the seat of emotions and sympathy, the heart in modern cultures.
Right. And they say, I love you from my kidneys, and
Right. I love you. Right. From the guts. He had a gut reaction.
Right.
Right. So, but here's where the plot twist is, right? The priest is supposed to be the one that's godly. The Levite is supposed to show divine compassion, but it's this half-breed.
Right.
It's the guy that, almost, but not quite Jewish.
Right.
The one who has a history of being apostate to Yahweh. He's the one that shows divine compassion. That's the plot twist. Now, oil and wine are to ease pain and to cleanse any wounds. Oil softens, wine is a mild disinfectant. The combination of oil and wine as a curative is attested in ancient sources, both Jewish and pagan Greek. The touch of verisimilitude and its accompanying irony should not be lost. Oil and wine were commonly used in sacrifices at the temple. The priest and Levite could well have had them on hand for use.
I get that.
But it is the Samaritan who actually carries them and makes use of them.
Wow.
These guys actually had the means to help their fellow Hebrew.
Right.
But it's the half-breed. It's the not quite, but kind of sort of apostate, bootleg Jew. He's the one that basically does the job of a priest. Right?
Yeah, and like you said, like the priests are supposed to be the go-between at that point, in the temple system between God and humanity, right? So, like, you would think that the one representing God would be the most godly, you'd think that the ones who are set apart, in the Levitical priesthood, or the sons of Aaron, as it were, that they would be the ones representing God, and they're not.
Right.
That's bananas, bro.
So not only is he doing the job with the oil and wine, he also helps him out monetarily. A denarius, a silver coin, was worth 1 day's wages for a common laborer. The amount given by the Samaritan is the equivalent of 2 days' wages. Depending on the quality and price of lodging, 2 denarii would be sufficient for a stay in an inn for several days, since 2 denarii could provide a month's food for a healthy adult male. The amount must have been sufficient to provide food, lodging, and service for well over a week, perhaps 2. In any case, several days are anticipated. When the Samaritan makes his return, he will pay any debt that might be outstanding. So he bandages him. He puts the oil and wine to him to heal him, brings him to the inn, and pays for at least a week's worth of lodging, food, and services. The half-breed.
Right.
The bootleg, carbon copy, $5 slum gold chain Canal Street Jew. He's the one that does this.
Right.
Right? So the question does not correspond to the one in chapter 10, verse 29. The earlier question was, who is my neighbor? Here, the question is, which person proves to be neighbor? That is a very different kind of question. At most, one could say that the first question is answered indirectly. Your neighbor is anyone in need with whom you are thrown into contact. But in reality, the lawyer's question is moved off the scene and replaced by one that is more fundamental. If the issue is about love of neighbor, the question one should be asking is that of how one is to express that love, not to whom it should be expressed.
Right.
One cannot define one's neighbor. One can only be a neighbor. I'm going to say that again. One cannot define one's neighbor. One can only be a neighbor. The response of the lawyer to the question put by Jesus is very telling. He cannot say Samaritan, but simply the one who showed mercy. He's tight. He's tight because he knows Jesus boxed him into the corner. Like, so who's the neighbor here? Yeah, the guy who showed him mercy.
Right.
Can't say Samaritan, fam? Like, what's going on? Because you try to box me in.
That's right.
So I reversed your Cobra clutch on me, and now you feel some type of way. Right?
Oh, man. That's all bad.
But again, right, we see the reversal. We see how it gets underneath people's skin. It's like this fake Jew, this half-breed, this Gentile. He's the one that he's using to model what divine forgiveness and servitude looks like. That's very inappropriate for the people he's talking to. Is like, I don't like this.
Right.
I don't care if you don't like it. You need to hear it though.
Facts. And I think that kind of talks about like, the oh man, we're choosing violence today, but like, ethnicity. Ethnicity is not the trump card. You know what I'm saying? When it comes to being godly, it's simply just not. You know what I'm saying? So like, I mean, you could be from wherever, right, by blood, and not be like God or God-like, or God, being a godly person, representing the kingdom as you should, and this is a terrible reality, and also kind of brings it home, like when the scripture says all Israel ain't Israel. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, oh my goodness, we go Romans 11, you go all over the place with this thing, man. And it's just like, it doesn't make you a shoe in for the kingdom of God, just because you share DNA with some person from back in the day. We have to know better than that.
Right. And again, right, it's your genetic configuration isn't a shoe-in to your personal righteousness. You know what I mean? It just doesn't. It's what you do, right? It's faith and deeds. We know if you have pledged allegiance to Yahweh by what you do. What did the priest do in that parable? What did the Levite do in that parable? Did they show their allegiance? Actually, they did, but not to Yahweh.
Right. And I think I want to say one more thing again, more violence, guys. Sorry, I'm ready for it. I'm back. So some people have this idea about denominationalism, even in Christian circles. That we have the truth and they don't, or whatever the case is. And it's like, okay, you can have all the trappings, like you said, you can have all the uniform and everything else like that. You got the collar on, the big church hat, or whatever, and you're still not representing Christ, even though you think you are. Even though, my daddy is Bishop so-and-so. Okay, congratulations. You are the bishop's get. However, like you are not representing your Father in heaven. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, that's the problem, man. And I think that the more that we look into these things that Jesus is teaching, the more that we take it seriously. We're saying that those things, those externals, don't matter unless the heart has been changed. You know, and I think that's kind of one of those things. And we talked about like the deeds, right? But the deeds by themselves, I mean, the demons believe and tremble. Okay, congratulations, but they ain't saved. You know what I'm saying? So we have to do more than that, and it has to come from the outward workings of an inward change of heart. You know, and we see that in like the fruit of the Spirit. You can't fake those. You can fake a lot of the gifts if you want to. You can fake generosity if you want to, but you cannot fake the fruit of the Spirit, because the fruit of the Spirit is what comes in, and it's that outpouring of what's changed in you. You know, that regeneration, as it were. So.
Yeah, that's fire. That is fire. Man, that was good. So, guys, we just, hope you enjoy that. We broke down the concept of the parables. Hopefully you see parables in a whole new light. Mm-hmm. And basically every time Jesus told a parable, he basically chose violence, every time. And, but, sometimes you need to shake people up so they can hear the truth. Yeah. And listen, it's people remember stories.
Yeah.
And as Christians, we have the greatest story ever told. So let's really get good at telling the story, because people's eternity is banking on it.
Amen.
All right. So any last words before we out of here, CMB?
No, man, I'm glad to be back on online. I'll be in and out for a little bit. I've been enjoying my time off here, man. These allergies are kicking my butt here. So regardless, I'm back. I'm glad glad you're okay. The family. So
there it is. So all right, guys, we out of here. Please like, share, and subscribe. Share this video, and we'll catch you tomorrow at the bodega. Peace.